The F8F is an amazing plane at 4.7 and can win in crazy situations, but 90% of the player base does poorly with it because they don't understand how to play around its key weaknesses. In this video I'll show you how not to suck in the F8F, as well as give you the advanced strategies you've been missing out on and showing you an 8-kill game where I put it all into practice.
Your roll rate is not as good as mine. Go for the 264, I got the 109.
First, I'll play a few crucial clips to show you how to squeeze the maximum performance out of this plane. We'll start with the easiest positions to win from, and then apply those principles to win some truly insane scenarios.
Okay, careful, we have an LA7 inbound.
This is definitely getting interesting. But before I show you how to succeed with the cat, you need to understand the #1 mistake that gets rookie pilots killed, which is overcommitting to one target. With the low firepower and bad rudder at high speeds, it's easy to get a few hits on one guy and then make the error of going all in, because you think you can kill him if you stick on him a tiny bit longer. But the F8F is actually one of the worst planes for following people down to the deck, because you're not going to be able to hit a guy who's maneuvering at 600 kilometers an hour due to the rudder problems. Then you get third party, which leads to the Achilles heel of the F8F, the energy retention. This plane in a high speed return dumps hundreds of kilometers an hour nearly instantly, which means once you have to dodge someone's guns in close, you're done for. This tendency to lose speed also makes it mediocre at dodging head-ons, so you need to avoid turning with people early game and keep your speed up to avoid getting sprayed down by the first guy you see. The fact that this thing can win dogfights with BF-109s makes inexperienced players think it's the reincarnation of the American Zero. Don't fall for it. Because this plane relies on its performance, you also shouldn't take the gun pod. They make you way too heavy and the speed bleed becomes unmanageable. So, how do you get kills if you can't reliably go head-on, and you can't turn fight people except in the 1v1? Let me show you. At the start of every game, leverage the Bearcat's insane climb rate and aggressively climb towards the enemy team. Even though this engine bleeds power above 11,000 feet, an altitude advantage is more important than being in the peak performance zone. Let's use this match as a quick example. This game is a full up tier, which means most planes with decent climb for their BR would be outmatched. But because the enemy didn't climb optimally, as well as the F8F being a rocket ship, I'm above the entire enemy team. I'm not going for the Yak-9 on my right. I'm guessing he will go after the Corsair, which is why I look back and forth between them. Besides, if I go to the Yak-9, I will give my 6 to the incoming enemy cluster. Therefore, I'm going to go straight. Now I see this Yak-3 in front of me, and he is tracking towards me, so I expect that he will pitch up into me. So, I will react by turning outwards and making a curve over him, preparing to stall him out and then kill him as I come down. However, notice the LA7 in the background. He could third-party me because of how much energy the F8F loses in a turn, so therefore I will cancel my attack and bait him towards me. He goes vertical with me, and I can already tell that he will never pull up into me. So, I will pitch down into him because the Yak-3 has left and left me alone to engage the LA7. So he will never pull up because his engine especially suffers at higher altitudes and he had way too little energy to begin with. So I only did this because the Yak-3 lost interest in me. If the Yak-3 had come back, then he would have ended up very close on my 6 and I most likely would have died after making the pass on the LA7. So by waiting until the right moment and then seizing the opportunity when it presented myself, I preserved my life and we later went on to win the game due to my help. Earlier, I mentioned that you should never overcommit to one target. However, when you are clear to follow one target to the deck, it's important that you don't get reversed and die due to the Bearcat's complete inability to hit dodging targets at high speed. In this scenario, I'm chasing an FW-190, and I know that if I play badly, he will be able to reverse me even though I'm in a better plane and the winning position. Furthermore, I've met this pilot and I know he's a credible threat. Therefore, I will not full commit when I make a pass. Watch this P-47 make the exact mistake I'm warning about. He'll dive straight down on the dodging 190, compressing hard and missing every shot. So watch him go down. He goes straight from above, the 190 is making maneuvers to avoid him, and the P-47's roll rate is poor enough that he will never hit that, and neither would the F8F. If I was not here to pressure the 190 player, the P-47 would almost certainly have died. Now, diving on the 190, I maintain situational awareness by looking around, and I don't follow him directly down. Instead, I keep turning to the outside, maintaining my position directly behind and above him. If I keep this up, he will be forced to the deck, where he will have no more room to run. The 190 player realizes this and attempts a hard reversal with a low yo-yo. I prematurely throttle dropped and did a high yo-yo over him, placing myself in the perfect position to hit him as he came up. And because I briefly throttle dropped and because of this plane's poor energy retention, as well as the 190's poor turn rate, I am now planted on a 6 and will never let go. My massive amount of energy performance meant that I would keep up with him in the vertical stall, even after throttle dropping, and I set him on fire with the left pair of 50 cals. However, if I had been fighting a turn fighter, I would have played that scenario completely differently. Now let's look at exactly that. I'm in the F8F above 3 enemies. The lowest Spitfire is about to die from damage, and the A7M is missing a wingtip, so I'm not worried about him. The issue is Triple Rusky and the British Spitfire beneath me. He will play this smarter than the average turnfighter player, which means it will take me a while to kill him. I began by diving to test his reaction, and he went underneath me, forcing me to break off. If I followed him, I would have bled plenty of speed while still going too fast to hit him, leading to dying in an easy reversal. So instead, I do a high yo-yo, and that gives me all my position back, forcing him to defend again. He will do a 180, and the reason why I spray a little bit, even though I'm out of range, is to put a little bit of pressure on these people. So he will do a 180, and then he changes direction and he pitches back up into me. So I will defend him with a horizontal turn over to my left. Now, watch this carefully. He's very low on speed as he's pitching into me, and he doesn't have the shot because I'm forcing him to make big turns. But if I went straight up over him, I would have stalled myself out and given him a very easy shot, because it's about as easy as hitting a stalled out plane below you, except with a little bit more risk in case you miss. So the A7M, despite having no wingtip, then pitches up and surprises me with the amount of stall control he has left, proving that War Thunder is truly the most realistic of games. I wasn't worried about him hitting me, hugely at least, but I did defend against him to prevent him from getting a lucky shot in ending my game. So then I go after the Spitfire again, and I whiff all of my shots, and I'm about to pass 200 meters close to him. But by the time he turns around to get guns on me, he was 500 meters away. So I can now simply run away in a straight line, and once he's out of gun range, I will pitch back up into a shallow climb to regain my energy and positional advantage. Sure, I wouldn't have had to do that if I just hit my shots, but due to the Bearcats' mediocre firepower, you're going to end up in this scenario very often. Just don't commit to the turn fighter and bail out as soon as possible after you make your pass if you don't get the kill, because you want to avoid them getting on your 6 in too close. After just 35 seconds of running, my energy advantage over the Spit is massive, and I can try a Chandelle energy trap. This is an excellent way to kill any plane when you have an energy advantage, and if you want to check out a video dedicated to just energy traps, check out the resources I've linked in the description. The key is to keep up a shallow vertical turn, shallow enough to stay out of gun range, and introducing a tiny element of the vertical, so if he wants to chase me, he has to both turn and follow me upwards. So he decides, wisely, not to follow me up, but instead of running away, which would have been the optimal thing to do, he continues to stay directly underneath me. He had no options, because if he ran away, I would have gotten free 6, but since he turned underneath me, then I get free 6 anyway, and he's going a lot slower and has less time to prepare for a defensive maneuver. And I will get the A7M as well. Now the A7M made a foolish decision by continuing to follow the Spitfire. He should have broken off and flown in a different direction to pincer me from multiple directions, or gone return to base, because he probably was not going to do anything without the wingtip. But as we all know, he still was able to pitch straight up into me without one, so, could have worked out either way. Let's watch another example, this time against 2 credible opponents instead of just 1. This situation looks unwinnable, but I'll manage to salvage it and get another kill, even though I didn't win the match. The key is to never panic. The 2 planes on my 6 have mediocre turn rate and climb rate, which means I can build an energy advantage over them if I can get away. But they have a big enough head start on me that it would take forever to outrun them, which means I decide to engage them now. I turn into them and dive somewhat to maximize my speed. The most difficult shot is the one I'm about to give the VB-10. I go underneath him to make him flip upside down to aim at me, then I will suddenly turn to the outside. He completely whiffs his approach and gives me room to do the exact same thing to the P-47, who comes down at a worse angle for me than I expected. He'll come down behind me, and if I go straight for the VB-10, I will die. So I have to turn back and force him to overshoot since he's going much faster. The problem here is the VB-10 is playing it smart and he's running away in the back, as well as my horrible aim when I go after the P-47. So, as I'm shooting at the P-47, the VB-10 is coming back, and I am aware that the VB-10 is making a turn for my 6. So I have a mental timer in my head that I will not continue shooting at the P-47 too long. And this is what will save my life, because if I had been on the P-47 a second longer, the VB-10 would have been able to slide into position, and he would have had a much easier time shooting me down with his 4 cannons, which is what I do not want. So you can see the Achilles heel of the F8F here. Despite having way higher engine power than both of these guys, I don't have the turn rate or the speed to beat them. So I have to put the nose down as soon as possible, but they're just not giving me the opening to do that. So once the P-47 goes vertical, I'm not going to chase him up because that would get me killed by the VB-10. I put the nose down, and I will now run away. In a race to 600 kilometers an hour, I will beat both these planes easily at this altitude. Watch this P-47's speed advantage melt away like ice in the sun. I get out of their gun range by a shallow dive, and then I will pitch up into a shallow climb because this plane is capable of both outrunning and outclimbing these enemy planes at the same time. This is why you should never lose control. As long as the enemy isn't in gun range, you still have a chance. This is more difficult to pull off against 5-7 opponents, and in full up tiers, winning with this plane involves a whole lot of mind games in addition to learning the core mechanics. Thankfully, the matchmaking for this aircraft is favorable. After only 80 seconds of running, I already have a massive energy advantage over the P-47. Look at how fast I'm getting away from both these guys despite losing a dogfight to them only 2 minutes ago. I now have enough altitude advantage to attempt an energy trap, which I will do by making a slow turn back into their direction. If they follow me, they will slowly lose speed in the steep climb that I'm about to make them perform and fall out of the sky, giving me ample chance to shoot them down. Watch my speed indicator as well as the distance indicator on the enemy planes. They are cutting off my flight path, meaning they can close the distance even if they're slower, but they're barely gaining. So in 120 seconds, this engine has turned an impossible scenario into a winnable fight. This is the power of the F8F, and the reason why people get upset about it being 4.7. So as I see the enemy planes getting slower, I will begin tightening the loop to keep them thinking that they have a chance to catch me. My speed gauge is telling me that the P-47 must be slower than 300 IAS, which is dangerously close to stalling. His closure rate is too low for him to have anywhere near this kind of speed to pitch into me. So the VB-10 will be smart enough to realize that he's boned, but the P-47 will stick it until it's way too late. So unfortunately, I will get massive skill issue and fail to kill him. However, I damage him enough that I can make a climbing spiral and get away from his guns. The P-47 is a formidable opponent for the Bearcat in high-altitude engagements, but down here is helpless without an energy advantage. From here, it's easy to pull in and inflict the severe damage that kills him later. I do die in this match, but it probably had something to do with my packet loss. Watch this shot. It goes 150 meters wide, but it still manages to hit me. For some reason, NA servers have been horrible over the past week because this doesn't just happen to me. So everyone watching this video should switch to EU until the issue is fixed. But before we watch the next example, take a moment to think back about all of the previous games and spot the tactic I'm using to make this thing even more effective than it already is. If you figured it out already, tell me in the comments. Did you see that I'm almost never overheating in any of my games, even though I'm playing on temperate and hot maps? This is because I'm using manual engine controls, which allows me to wet for the full 18-minute duration without cooking my engine. This is because the F8F's automatic controls are set up horribly and lead to bad overheating in minutes, where with MAC you will never have overheating problems. To do this, set up your controls and then set 85% mixture on takeoff, 100% prop pitch, 50 to 100% radius for your coolant depending on the map, and 100% for oil. You do have to worry about a supercharger gear switch, which is at 2,800 feet or around 900 meters. This may seem complicated at first, but it will boost your performance beyond every other F8F, especially late game when your engine would be boiling without it. Missing out on this is a crippling disadvantage because it means you won't have access to your full power late game, which is when you need it most in the carry. Now that we know how to create an energy advantage out of thin air, let's watch a full game that involves every key element of the F8F's playstyle. It's a 5.0 game. I climbed it at 25 degrees off the runway, and then after passing about 5,000 feet, switched to climbing at 260 IAS. This plane is a rocket ship, and at the start of the game, I've secured an altitude advantage over the entire enemy team. American teams are known for getting obliterated, so I have to start getting frags or I will have to go 1 versus 6. However, I can't go low too early because I'm not sure if there are more enemy fighters up here that are unspotted. This Q-43 is the perfect target because he's the highest up and extremely annoying to kill if he's paying attention, but since he hasn't reacted to me, I know he has bad situational awareness. He wakes up at the last second, but it's too late, and he will die from that severe damage. Notice how I roll the wings with the keyboard to make them perpendicular to the flight path of the enemy. This is to compensate for the F8F's bad rudder at high speeds, which you may have seen trolling me while I was taking the shot. This becomes much more annoying later. I then switch to chasing the bomber. This is a mistake because he is not a threat to my team, while the horde of enemy fighters at low altitude definitely is. I do get an assist without taking any damage, but it wasn't the ideal play. My teammates have unfortunately been slaughtered, but I am now in the perfect position to boom and zoom the enemy team. Because of the F8F's poor energy retention, I have to be very careful with my passes so I don't end up becoming too slow to energy trap anyone. Now, an example of how bad the rudder becomes at high speeds. You need to roll around to compensate even when the enemy is flying in a straight line. When they dodge, hitting them becomes impossible, as seen here. So I'll chase the Q-44 down, and just as I take the shot, he dodges me. So I don't chase him after missing the pass. And because of that, I get a free kill on the Q-61, who lost situational awareness and died as a direct result. Target switching is an essential skill in ARB, but you must master it in the F8F, or you will get stuck at 1 kill per game and never improve past 50% win rate. Now I have a choice to make. Do I ignore the Q-44 and go for the guys in front, or deal with the guy behind me? I decide to turn around for the Q-44 because his flight model is absolutely nuts, and if given time, he could end up above me and on my 6 in a much more maneuverable plane. Therefore, I begin setting up a Chandelle energy trap, and he takes the bait by pitching up for me. However, this is when the NA servers hit me with a massive lag spike, and 3 of the enemies will crash. Gaijin servers hamsters are going on a strike, and it's ruined some of my clutch games. This needs to be fixed, but it's not the point of the video, so let's move on. After the lag spike, I'm still in a good position against these 2 enemies. The I-185 is clearly damaged, while the X-26 doesn't have the power to helicopter up to me. I know this because I'm still at 360 kilometers an hour, which is plenty to energy trap these guys. By making a big circle above them, I prevent them from hitting any shots while completely draining their energy. The Su-6 is going to kill himself by falling for this. Look how slow he is. Once I pitch back down, it's going to be a very easy shot. So, after taking him out, I'm going to move on to the I-185. However, I noticed earlier on my minimap that there was a bomber icon, and I hear him coming. So I look over in time to catch the incoming T-18B, and I will manage to dodge him in such a way that I only take a mild amount of damage. I went underneath him and then rolled upwards unexpectedly, and that kept me moving in the same direction as the I-185, which means the 185 did not get the free shot on my 6. So now, once the T-18 has overshot me, is virtually useless against the F8F. It's not an immediate threat. So I'm going to engage him. I'm not just going to leave him alone. because now I'm open to taking him out without being third party. So pro tip, the B-18B has a belly gunner, but the T-18s don't. So if you stay below them, they can't do anything to you. After losing his gunner, the T-18 is helpless against me, and I'll finish him off just before his friend comes in. So, very easy to catch up with a big bomber, even though surprisingly maneuverable at higher speeds. And now there's another T-18 coming in. So I will put the nose down, and I'll gain as much speed as possible. The F8F has great acceleration at low altitude, but it's bad at dodging head-ons, so I need to recover my footing before he ends up on top of me. By the color of his tracers as he's spraying at me from long range, I can tell it's the version with the 57mm autocannon, which will destroy me if the shells get close enough to chip the paint. So by going underneath him and then pitching up at the exact correct time, I forced the reversal. If he throttled down, popped flaps to pull in, or was in a better plane, that could have ended quite badly, but I was confident that he would not do so, and it's a very awkward bomber. And most pilots don't pick to throttle drop at the exact correct time, so therefore I end up instantly on his 6. So I will be firing. Once I get very low on ammo, I fire in short bursts, because due to the low firepower, this plane demands good aim and pinpoint accuracy. If you're getting kills with 250 rounds or less, you're doing good. Anything more, and you need to intentionally focus on trigger discipline and core shooting mechanics. There's a great video guide from Defin that you should check out for this. Anyway, the T-18 is too damaged to catch me, and I'm out of ammo, so I'm clear to return to the base. So the T-18 died in the background, and after bellow landing and taking off again, I see an enemy VB-10 coming in for our B-17, who has been blind hunted. I've also spotted a J-21. These guys will be hidden by the clouds, so they could be quite dangerous if I get ambushed. But, because I don't want to camp the airfield, I will run away to the left, betting that I will be unspotted because of the cloud cover and being below them, which makes the spotting system incredibly inconsistent. This works, because neither of them react to my presence, so I will regain my altitude in a shallow climb, and then come back once I'm high enough to attack without throwing away my plane. The VB-10 killed the B-17 and sets the F8F on fire on the runway, but he will die to the AA. However, notice that I'm still looking around. The J-21 is still present, but I have no idea where he is. Fortunately, the F8F will manage to repair, which leaves me with a teammate to work with. Since I can't find the J-21, I will decide to go after the VB-10 that's lurking around in the mid-map and is killing mid-map AI, ground targets, ground units, and the airplanes. So, my decision to leave this VB-10 alone and go after the mid-map guy will end up hurting me, because I will be leaving my teammate alone with an enemy aircraft above him and concealed by the clouds, but at the same time, I needed to get people out of the match fast. I made sure to shallow climb towards the VB-10, and that gives me a massive energy advantage once more. So, all I'll need to do is use a sideways energy trap, and he will be helpless if he takes the bait, which he does. By performing a shallow turn over his head, I avoid the head-on completely, negating the greatest weakness of the F8F. You may be wondering, why do I mention energy traps so often? The F8F has amazing energy production, but everything else about the airframe is mediocre. Therefore, you need to get your enemies slow in order to kill them. I'll stop using chandelles when they stop working. I turned after this guy a little bit too soon for a perfect energy trap, but because of my turn rate advantage, I will be easily able to stay on his 6 and kill him. This guy should have come to help his teammates since it was a close situation. Staying behind and farming AIs potentially cost his team the game. So I will be able to stick in behind him here, and there is essentially no contest since I have more energy that I could convert into speed. And while this thing is a little bit awkward, when chasing after people, it is good enough to get the job done on something like a VB-10 that does not have the best turn rate to begin with. And after I get a few hits on him, he just ends up kind of rolling over and crashing into the ground. But remember that J-21 that I was talking about? Yeah. Unfortunately, my last teammate died to the J-21 jumping in from the clouds, and it's now a 1 versus 1 for the game. I chose to run away from the J-21 after killing the VB-10. This is because if he starts above me, I can't fight my way out of a losing position due to not having a large advantage in turn rate. He has much better firepower, so a head-on is a no-go. Instead, by climbing away, I equalize the energy difference between us. Now, when I turn back towards him, I have plenty of speed to work with. So, I'll dive below him to give him a difficult shot and avoid the head-on. If he goes straight, I will be able to pitch into him from below. So, let's execute the plan. I turn right towards him, being at about a 90-degree angle to give him some closure rate, and then I'll dive underneath him once he gets close enough. I don't want to dive too far to the deck because that would be handing him a free advantage for nothing, but I am thinking that he will almost certainly pitch into me, and he does. So I will pretend to go to the right, and then I will switch over to the left, and because he fell for that, he doesn't even get to shoot his guns. So now, because the F8F loses so much speed in a turn, I barely have to throttle drop to get behind him. I would have throttle dropped if I heard him massively throttle down, but he didn't, so I'm instantly behind him. So he will panic, go up, then go back down in front of me, which will return all of my speed and my turn rate back, and since he has to turn more to get out of my guns than I do to put guns on him, he will die whether he likes it or not. So, I'm gonna kill him, and I will end up with the last man standing. So if you've made it this far into the videos, kudos. I've linked my Discord in the description so you can join my small community. So have fun, and I'll catch you in the next video.